Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. Today, my guest is Jennifer Morgan. She's a pediatric occupational therapist and founder of Most Kids OT, a private pediatric occupational therapy practice in West Los Angeles. Jennifer founded Most in Malibu in 2013 with the goal of providing individualized and holistic OT services to children of all ages and abilities. Today, we are going to talk about fine motor skills and their importance for academic success. Let's jump in.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social-emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited that you're here as well. How are things going?
Things are good. It's a good, I think it's going to be a nice, relaxing summer. It's just been busy with, the end of school. I think it's just been a challenging year overall. I think.
Right. I think parents are trying to figure out what their kids need right now, how to support them now that the school year's ended. Everybody's taking a collective breath. And then trying to figure out next steps.
Exactly. And I think, summer is a good time we have extra time to work on some of the things that maybe kind of fell to the wayside during the school year when other things were more important, with virtual learning and all of that. So I think, handwriting, keyboarding, things like that kind of took a backseat to, other learning skills. And I think that summer it'll be a nice summer for us because it's going to be a combo of like rest, but also be able to help families work on some of those things that did fall behind during the school year.
Right. So, and I think that's true for families as well, having that combination, that balance of rest and working on those skills. And I think kids need it because it's just been such a hard year. I
know a lot of the kids are going to camp, which I think is so great, being able to be outside and outdoors in the ocean, even just, in nature. I think kids really need to just play. It's been such an intense year for everyone that they just need some time to be too,
I can't agree with you more. I think I actually had contributed to an article on that exact fact that kids need to play. And it's funny because parents think that they're not really working on things when they're playing, but there's so many skills you can work on when you're playing.
Oh, so many skills, gross motor skills, sensory processing, social skills. I think, just being outside, we've been home for so long. Just being outside in nature is just so important for them. So.
Right. And social emotional development is part of the skills that you want to develop. And so it's absolutely important.
I agree. And, kids haven't been able to be around their peers much. And I think camp or, whether it's summer school or camp, summer is just such a more relaxed kind of vibe in general, to whether kids are doing anything academic or, if they are doing occupational therapy. But I think, just being able to be around other kids and play, whether they have a mask on or not, it's like, just being able to be around peers I'm excited for the kids this summer.
I'm excited too. I'm excited too. I know that my kids are excited. Yes, parents and kids. I know my kids were thrilled to be able to go to camp in person. And just the thought, I think initially I was getting emailed about online camps and I was like, no way. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's just been so much online, it's like, let them be in the real world again. So I'm happy for the kids, honestly.
Me too. And you've already mentioned occupational therapy, which is, the work that you do. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast. And we've talked about OT on the podcast before, but I really wanted to spend some time really digging into, fine motor skills and why those are important skills. and how they impact handwriting. And so, you already mentioned that some kids have kind of fallen behind in terms of the development of their motor skills, particularly handwriting. So when kids come to see you and they're struggling with handwriting, quote unquote handwriting, what does that look like when you see them, when they come to see you?
So typically I would say the most common referral for us is actually just handwriting. So we see all different types of, where handwriting kind of falls apart. So we're looking at kids with what we call dysgraphia. So, kids who have trouble with the actual act of handwriting, the motor component. And, usually it's kids who have really messy handwriting. We call it, illegible. It's just really hard for their teachers and their parents or even themselves to read their writing. And the act of handwriting has usually, when they come to us, it's kids really dislike handwriting, and because it is so challenging. But what's so interesting about what we do in occupational therapy in terms of handwriting or fine motor skills is that there are just so many small little components to handwriting that I think we don't think about, or most people don't think about in general. And so
I would love for you to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we get to kind of pick that apart, which is actually, I love it.
Yes, because that's, again, when we think about all the work that we do, you really have to find out where you need to intervene. And it sounds like what you're going to describe helps you to identify how to approach a particular child when you're trying to support them.
Right. And so when a child comes in, the first thing we look at is, just kind of like an overall observation of the child themselves and their physical, not just appearance, but what we call muscle tone. So a lot of kids who have difficulties with handwriting actually have low muscle tone in their hands. And we also look at, are they using their shoulder and their elbow and their wrist instead of their small muscles in their fingers. So it's actually really interesting. And a lot of kids, and this is why we can go back to this later, but it is so important for kids to crawl and do these, make sure that they hit those motor milestones when they're younger, even when they're infants, because as they develop, those shoulder muscles, the shoulder strength, the elbow strength, and just your overall strength and stability in your upper extremities is so important to be able to do those more fine motor distal activities like handwriting, shoelace tying, keyboarding, things like that. So we look at the physical appearance of the child and what are they compensating by using their shoulder? Are they, what does their pencil grip look like? Are they using, what kind of grasp do they have? Do they use what we call a tripod grasp, which is with the 3 fingers and really gives you some nice, what we call finger dexterity? Are they able to use the small muscles of their hands? Are they using more of like a full fingered grasp on their writing utensil? So it's like, obviously, and if you're doing this, you're not going to have much control of your small muscles in your fingers. So you are going to be using more of your shoulder, your elbow. So it really we look at all of those things in general, right? So before we look at handedness, are they right-handed or left-handed? Do they switch between? Are they stabilizing the paper with their opposite hand? I mean, these are all just really basic things that we look at immediately. So just based on those quick observations, we can kind of tell what we're going to get, to be honest. And then we usually have a child do some sort of standardized assessment, whether it's the test of visual motor integration. So that is a great standardized test that we use the most frequently. And I think you guys also administer the VMI. So it helps us to identify, how they're using their eyes and their hands together. And then it breaks apart, the visual perceptual piece. So how are they seeing, what they're writing or what's on the page? And then also it breaks apart the motor component of how are they using their small muscles to really be able to coordinate coordinate their small muscles of their hands to be more precise for movements, which is important for handwriting. So those are all of the like underlying skills and things that we're looking at before we even really, kind of tackle the handwriting, the act of handwriting. So then typically we'll either get work samples or have them do some sort of writing sample. And then when you start to get into the actual handwriting, the biggest thing that we're looking at is sizing of the letters, spacing of the letters. Are they able to kind of what we call, keep the letters in the same word, bump each other, hug each other? Are their letters really far apart and it's hard to tell, is this one letter or is this a word? Like, where's this word stop and start? And then are they using the lines appropriately? Are they, is it really hard to read? Is their handwriting illegible because, their letters are off the page and not following any sort of line? So it's a combination of all of these things, and it's actually really fun to figure it out.
It sounds like fun. I think we're alike in that way, is that investigation aspect of the work that we do is really exciting, because then we get to figure out how to help the kids.
Exactly. And I think it is interesting because I think when kids come to us, or parents or teachers refer to us, or even, we get a referral from a neuropsychologist, they're like, okay, handwriting, it's for handwriting. And then we get to kind of, okay, let's see what's going on here. We really get to pick it apart. And I think it sounds so simple, but there are so many different things to work on. And especially, if there are some habits that kids have picked up along the way that we need to figure out, are we going to be able to break this habit, the way that they hold their pencil, or are they a little bit too old for that? And we need to just go with it. We need to figure out, is there some underlying hand strength activities that this child really needs to get going so that they do have the endurance for longer handwriting tasks. And then we also make the decision, with the team, with the parents and the team, of, is keyboarding a good idea? Like, how difficult is handwriting for this child? Are they old enough to kind of maybe make that switch and start using, a keyboard and working on their fine motor skills that way, so that they can get their messages across, their thoughts and ideas out. So it's a whole process.
Yeah. And that's such an important conversation to have. And there's been a lot of conversations about keyboarding versus handwriting. And often it's not an either or, you're not choosing, but it's not a little. Handwriting difficulties isn't a little thing either. I mean, I remember a while ago, there was an article that came out that said, bring back handwriting. It's good for your brain. And it was based on, a study that showed that there was regions in the brain that became activated for learning when people were doing a task by hand, as opposed to using a keyboard.
Absolutely.
And so we know that there are benefits to that. So it's not just the messy handwriting. You're actually, encoding information and processing information in your brain in a different way.
And that's actually exactly what I tell parents when they ask whether, like, I get this question all the time. Is handwriting really important? Do they really need to work on this if they're just going to be typing or using dictation? I say, absolutely. I think it's, even if I see a child and they end up making great progress with their handwriting and, it's legible enough, and they're in third grade. Third grade is usually around the age where I say, that's kind of the age when I say, okay, we can start both. Like, let's do handwriting and keyboarding. And then whichever one is more efficient for that child and makes the most sense for them, we can kind of primarily do that. And then, I always tell parents this, I say, I never don't stop doing handwriting. You need to always kind of come back to it, because it really is. It's such another portion of the learning process. I mean, all of it. And that's honestly why it is so challenging for kids so often, because the act of copying information from, a far point copy, like the whiteboard, or back in the day, the chalkboard.
Yes. I remember the chalkboard.
Yeah, chalkboard. Or copying information from a textbook, or being able to listen and take notes. Those skills are really challenging for a lot of the kids that you and I work with, but they're also just when we can work on those skills and make progress in those skills, you see how crucial it is for kids for learning. And when it all starts to come together visually, auditorily, tactilely, and motor wise, it's so important. And so the idea that handwriting is going to be a lost art form in some way, I can't imagine that, because I think no matter what, even kids who have pretty significant dysgraphia or really have a hard time with the act of handwriting, or, keeping their handwriting legible, even for themselves to read, I think there's just something about it that's, whether they write just a few words, if they're taking notes, or they learn their signature and, just a couple other really basic things to keep with them throughout their life. It really is, the act of handwriting is so important for learning. So I hope that people recognize that, not just for my own sake, because I love doing what I do, but it really is important. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important for a number of reasons. And of course, a lot of students who come to us is because it's impacting their academic success. Because you and I have probably seen these kids, when you talk about kids who have dysgraphia, they've got all these great ideas in their head and their hand just can't keep up with the thoughts that are in their brain.
I know.
And that can be incredibly frustrating. Do you see that?
Oh my goodness. I would say most of the kids that we end up starting with are frustrated in some way. The kids that we get referred for handwriting, yes. Kids are, by the time that we see them most often, kids are really frustrated. It's really hard for them. And they do, so our kids they have such great ideas. And then to not be able to get your ideas out in a timely manner and have it be really challenging is extremely frustrating for them. So a lot of times we start with just boosting their confidence, honestly, and letting them know that they're not alone. This is not fun for a lot of kids. It's really hard for a lot of kids. This is what I like to say. My most recent thing is, this is what I do every day, guys. I do this all day, this is what we do, and you're not alone in this. And it's, this is hard, but let's make it fun. And I think I try to make it as functional as possible for kids. So I like to share in the process. I like to share with them what I would like for them to be able to do. And I like their input on how they see what they would want to get out of their sessions with me in terms of handwriting. So, and I like to make goals with kids together. So let's try and write 2 sentences in this amount of time. Or for kids who are a little bit younger, I really want you to be able to write your first name really well and feel really good about it. So you can show your teacher, or you can show your mom, and they're going to be really proud of you. Or, or your first and last name, just so it's I want them to feel good about it, because a lot of times by the time kids come to OT for fine motor skills or handwriting, their confidence is kind of shot. It's like, oh, I can't do this. I don't want to do it. This is terrible. So I think just getting them to feel good about it and to have them see progress in themselves, and then the teachers to see progress and the parents to see progress. And so it's kind of this whole team effort of, oh, wow, you can do this. And then it's cyclical in terms of let's try something a little bit more challenging. See, you can do it. It's not terrible. So that's my approach.
Yeah. And it seems that when you're building that confidence, like you've described, it motivates kids to continue to work on building those skills.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I'm not going to lie. This spring was really hard to start with some of the kids. I was using, oh my gosh, I was using I pulled out all the stops in terms of I was like, okay, let's work for gummy bears. I was just what do we want to do here? I was like, for gummy bears. Yeah, I was like, I'm going to use my behavioral strategies here. It's just let's feel good about it, but this is hard. It's been a hard year. You don't want to, I know you don't really want to work on this, but let's do it. Let's do it together. Let's do, I pulled, shaving cream, writing letters in shaving cream. And, I've been as creative in terms of getting kids to be motivated, especially this spring after the year that they've had with virtual learning and being in school, and they were just burnt out. And so we did. We got quite a few new kids in spring, and getting them to be motivated at the end of the pandemic when they're tired and they're exhausted and they don't really want to do anything. So it was a challenge, but it also, I think I've never felt more proud either in terms of how much progress I've been able to make in a short amount of time, and seeing the kids do that as well. So like, yeah, I used rewards that I don't usually do, but it worked, you know, and I think just everyone kind of saw that, you know, just saw the progress.
There's definitely a need to be creative.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it seems too that, you know, during this time, and we're recording at the tail end of the pandemic, where a lot of teachers weren't able to actually see kids as they were writing. So all the teachers got was the end product, what they uploaded to the platform. And so, you know, if they saw the messy handwriting, they don't know if was this kid just rushing through the work, trying to get it done so we could go and play, or were there some real fine motor dexterity issues? Exactly. And so I think they missed out on being able to see what was happening and to make that referral when it was appropriate.
Exactly. So that is why our spring was quite busy, because most of the kids had gone back in person at that point. And then it was really clear, oh boy, like we got some stuff to work on here, you know, and especially the kids that we work with, the online virtual school was really challenging for them. And so just being able to have them function and learn anything academically was first priority for parents, teachers, kids. And then, like we mentioned earlier in the conversation, you know, the handwriting really fell to the wayside and wasn't as important. And then now it is, right? So now it's like we have, and a lot of the kids have been struggling the entire school year, whereas we would have, if it weren't for the situation, you know, for the pandemic, we would have gotten these referrals maybe in the fall, you know, maybe in September, October, which is typically around conference time when it's kind of like, okay, this child's struggling in this area. Let's potentially get them some intervention. But like you said, it wasn't obvious that there was really a problem or some, you know, an area of difficulty that this child needed to work on until they were back in person, which for a lot of kids, it was around, you know, January, February, March. So yeah, it's been a busy time. And I'm, you know, luckily I love what I do. So
that's great. I mean, it's great. That's great for you and great for the kids that work with you. Yeah. And I think that there's some mystery behind what happens during your therapy sessions. And I would love for you to kind of walk us through, you know, how do you work with kids to kind of develop those fine motor skills that ultimately impact, you know, obviously buttoning their shirts, tying their shoelaces, but also handwriting, like we've been talking about.
Yeah, you know what? That is such a great question that people don't really ask. And there is so much mystery behind it. And I think a lot of times it looks like we're just playing, which I think it's funny and fun, and we are playing, but there are underlying skills that we're targeting. And I think our job is to make it look fun for the child and feel fun, even when they're working. So typically, you know, if it's a 30-minute session, which a lot of times we do 30 or 45-minute sessions with kids who are in school, just because an hour-long session during the school day, if we're seeing a child at one of the schools that we go to a few private schools in the area. So in that time frame, you know, I love to start with theraputty. Theraputty is like, it's so funny because I have used it with every age from preschool through, I have had like 7th graders. And theraputty is just, you probably heard of it, but it's this resistive putty, basically. It's like kind of like Play-Doh, but thicker. And it comes in different resistances. So the different colors coordinate to, you know, easy, medium, difficult. And so, like, for example, green theraputty is just every kid loves it and they don't get sick of it. And it's the best thing to use for hand strength. And actually, I briefly worked with adults in inpatient rehab at UCLA with, upper body strengthening, things like that. And theraputty is also used with adults. So it's just this like great tool. I love to hide little objects in it, like marbles, or you can do little Legos. And so the kids have to manipulate the putty and pull it apart, and it's using both hands. And, sometimes I'll have the kids find the little objects and then have them cut the putty. So cutting the putty is really great for hand strength and building endurance in the hand. So that's kind of my favorite easy activity and I think a lot of occupational therapists have theraputty in their bag, like just always. So we have different colors, and that's just a great tool. So, we work on sessions can look different, and we always tailor it to the child. So I think that's what in my practice, it's myself and my colleague, Christy, we really are good at getting on the kids' level and figuring out what does this child need. So no session ever looks the same, but I think you kind of end up having your same successful activities that work with a child, whether it's, you're working on fine motor skills, sensory processing, gross motor skills, you kind of have your like bag of tricks that work, and you use those because they've been so successful. So for me, it's, theraputty. Typically if we're working on handwriting, I like to use adaptive paper and a slant board. So those are like my two tools that I typically use. The highlighted paper is fantastic, and it's the best thing to help kids with the sizing and the spacing and what we call alignment of the letters when they're doing writing. So I use that from, I would say I start that in kindergarten, and I use that through, even with the older kids. But so HighWrite is the brand, and they make fantastic paper that like just for different ages. And so that's just a really great way to work on the handwriting. I mean, we use the Handwriting Without Tears program. That is, we have those booklets, but we love like working on coloring. So like, we'll print out coloring is the best way to work on fine motor dexterity. You wouldn't think that, but it really, because the kids, so sometimes will kind of like stabilize their wrist. So they have to use their small muscles, and then they can kind of feel that. So just coloring in small spaces is not fun for a lot of kids who have difficulty with handwriting, because they have to use the fine motor control and, and take their time. It's like, right. A lot of kids just want to like rush through it. But yeah, we get to work on, we do crafts. So, multi-step tasks that involve fine motor skills. So cutting, coloring, writing, lacing, stringing objects. And then a lot, we like to incorporate sensory and or gross motor into most of our sessions. So whether that's a game of Twister, working on right-left discrimination. Again, like it looks like we're playing the whole time. All of these things I'm describing, it looks like we're playing, but we're working on, with Twister is the best because you get to work on endurance, right-left discrimination of the body, just auditory processing, all of these things. So we get to do really fun stuff, and it's such a pleasure, and we see progress when we do this, so it just depends on the kid. We like to change it up, but usually, we'll do some sort of warm-up activity, transition activity, some sort of writing or fine motor activity. And then I like to do some sort of like gross motor sensory game, and then finish with some sort of little like, they get to choose, 5 minutes of let's play Connect 4, we have great academic games on the iPad, things like that. So I don't know, it's really fun.
It sounds like it. And again, it just sounds like if the kids experience it as fun, then they are more engaged.
Exactly.
Which is what you want
right.
For any kind of therapeutic setting.
Right. And then I think for us, we really do, I think I've told you this before, but we do pride ourselves in making really quick progress. That's why I think, I like to include the child pretty much no matter how old they are. Like, what do you want to work on? What are we going to work on together? So they're included in that process. We love to collaborate with parents and teachers, whoever we see most often. If we're doing a home visit, we spend a few minutes at the end of the session going over what we worked on, what they can work on that week until we see them again. Typically, we see children once or twice a week. And then if it's at school, we like to also, just after the session, tell the teacher what we worked on so that they can be aware. So that it really is a team process always.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so what does it look like, or how do you know when a child is ready to graduate from treatment? So it sounds like you really pride yourself in helping kids make efficient progress. So how do you know when they're ready to be finished with treatment, and what can parents expect to see?
Such a great question. We know, and the child knows. It's just like, we're just ready. Like, it's just, they've met their goals. And I think what happens, and Christy and I talk about this. So Christy and I work together. We're like, okay, we're good. Like, we know that they don't need us anymore. Like, we know that they're, carrying over the skills that we've worked on in sessions. They're consistently, using those skills. And, if we're working on handwriting, we always, before we decide to actually exit a child, we connect with the teachers and the parents and say, look, we're kind of feeling like they're ready to be done. What do you think about that? And are you we're seeing this in our sessions. Are you seeing this in the classroom, or are you seeing this at home as well? And usually it's yes. Sometimes parents want to stick with us just for a little bit longer, just because for kind of like a safety thing, or we can suggest doing, more of like a consultation once a month. Let's just check. Why don't we check in a couple of weeks and just see what's going on? We do that a lot, actually. So we'll see a child consistently for say a month or two. And then they're doing so well, and we feel like we've made so much progress. So do they, so do the parents. And we say, okay, let's take a break, or let's pause OT. I think you're ready to be done. And then maybe in a couple more months when school starts again, or, the parents feel that they want, or the teachers feel like they want us to take a peek at something else, or maybe because we stopped working on this, it kind of felt they need a refresher, so then we might pick up OT again and again. So it's sometimes it kind of follows this wave of, we end up seeing kids again, and not for anything bad. It's just they might need us again for a little refresher. So we might see them for a few more sessions again, which is so lovely for us because we get to see them again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, you just seem to have this holistic view of the child, because you're looking at them from so many different aspects and angles. And then you also talked about collaborating with parents and with teachers. And that collaborative approach is so important, particularly if kids are not only doing OT. You mentioned, a child with an auditory processing challenge. They might be working with an audiologist or an educational therapist. And again, that cross-disciplinary communication is so important for the child's success.
I agree. And I do. So we take pride in ourselves for a lot of reasons, no, but because we really do make fast progress. And the other thing is we really do collaborate, and we're known for, I think I've told you this as well. When we get a child and say we're ready to exit them, or maybe we just start with them and we're like, this might not be our area of specialty. I think this child actually really needs reading intervention first, or why don't we do, they might have an auditory processing issue. Why don't you go, check out that area of expertise, because our expertise lies in in a certain skill set. And if we get a child who we feel could benefit from another professional service, then we will make that recommendation immediately so that the parents can best use their resources. But I think, being able to, and then we're happy to talk to that professional and let them know why, and I think, and that's just, that's not necessarily collaborating, but I think being able to make that referral appropriately. But I think in terms of when we are working with a child and we're working with a child who's also receiving speech therapy or educational therapy, or, even just talking to the teachers on a regular basis, or if they're, also getting talk therapy, I think we really do make the time to make sure this child is getting what they need. And I think that's clear to the child, clear to the parents, and clear to the teachers of our clients, because that's what we're here for. I'm lucky that I do something that, we get to make a living doing this, but it's like, we're here for the child, So yeah, we do look at all aspects of their education and their life and try to make the best recommendations and provide the best services possible. So it's great.
It is great. And the work that you do is so great. And
Thanks.
I have just loved this conversation, and it's just so helpful. And, I've seen a lot of kids who have come to me, and as part of the assessment, we've identified there are some fine motor and dexterity issues, and refer them to occupational therapists like you who can really move the needle for them in terms of, you talked about self-confidence and taking pride in the work that they do and feeling confident about being able to get their ideas out on paper. It really is can have a significant impact on a child's life when they get the treatment that they need.
I agree. And even if it's, I have a new student who's going to be starting next week who I just had the conversation with the mom earlier this week, and she's like, he never, he's almost in 5th grade. Handwriting is not his forte. And mom was like, well, he never played with Legos. He just kind of avoided the fine motor skills. And I think that that's just so interesting. So I think it is important to know that obviously we say this, the earlier the better, but I think just encouraging kids in whatever way. So get the big Legos. You don't have to do the tiny little Legos. Start with something big, make them feel successful, and then move on. But it's this thing where kids, like when they don't feel successful when they're younger, they just stop. And I think just for parents to know to just encourage them, modify it, right? So get something else that they could feel successful where you're still able to work on their fine motor skills, like the game Perfection is so great to work on pincer grasp. There's so many games out there geared towards working on these developmental skills that I think it's worthwhile to know your child and to find games and activities that will help them with their fine motor skills early on. That's my recommendation.
And I love that. And, one of the reasons I started Child Nexus is because I wanted to have an opportunity to speak with other professionals like you from other disciplines, because we're all working toward the same goal of helping students thrive. And we approach it in different ways. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for this conversation today. And if parents want to reach out to you and have questions, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah. So our website is mostkids.org. So it's MOST as in Tom, kids.org. And all of our contact information is on there. And I'm Jennifer at mostkids.org is my email address. And yeah, I mean, we love the families that come to us. We love, just our local community. And I'd love to, if they don't need OT for some reason, we'll steer them in the right direction. So,
Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. And we'll put all that information in the show notes, and also Perfect. A link to your podcast as well.
Yes. Jen, making the most of it. My podcast. I think I'm going to start that up again. So took a little break, took a little reprieve, but we're ready to start that up again. So thank you. All this is my inspiration for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I absolutely love Jennifer's holistic and collaborative approach when working with kids. It makes a world of difference. We both believe in the importance and benefits of working in collaboration with the child, their parents, caregivers, teachers, therapists, and health and education professionals. It's one of the reasons that I'm thrilled that she is one of our Child Nexus community members. And if you would like to be part of that community, we would love to have you. Go on the website, childnexus.com, and get on our email list, and we will start communicating. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.